So the next of our four big subjects here is something that's related to what we were just talking about, which is Congress going to modify, eliminate, extend the Inflation Reduction Act's green energy subsidies? As I mentioned, as I think almost all of you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed at the end of 2022 and came online in the beginning of 2023, includes really just very, very large tax incentives for investment in green energy projects. Whereas before the Inflation Reduction Act, you could get a 10% credit for investing in a physical solar project, for example, and that's been true for 20 years. The IRA increased that number to a baseline of 30 and offered a path forward for projects to achieve as large as 70% tax credits. Many of our clients and many of you, I see a bunch of people here who have taken advantage of this. If you put $1 into solar, you're potentially, with leverage, getting back, like I said, as much as $1.30 just in the first year from investing in green energy, and as much as $1.60, $1.70 over the next 4 or 5 years, because of the increased subsidies and the bonus depreciation that we've just talked about. The Inflation Reduction Act subsidies are slated to continue for the next decade. A major question is, will the Republican Congress and administration seek to modify or end those subsidies? There's certainly an element of the Republican caucus that would be interested in doing that, Peter. At the same time, these subsidies have been broadly used and in general are pretty popular. So reading the tea leaves, what do you think is likely here?
I think, first of all, I would say that these sorts of tax changes will be prospective. So if you did a deal this year, last year, I think you're pretty safe. But it's hard to know what Congress is going to do. The Inflation Reduction Act overall was very expensive. Yeah, I think if you're congressional Republicans and you're looking for ways to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act without increasing the deficit too much, you might think going back into the Inflation Reduction Act, reducing some of those subsidies might be a good way to do it.
Do you think, so this is one of the areas where I think there's an okay chance that we might see some mixing of party lines. There were Republican votes for the IRA in 2022, and some Democrats defected in order to repeal these provisions, to get rid of these subsidies. The Republicans own all three branches. So I guess what would be the procedural posture here? How would they do it? And what numbers would they need?
Well, yeah, presumably it would be bundled into the tax cuts. Mm-hmm. And so it would be an offset for the tax cuts. And so it would be part of the same budget reconciliation process.
Right. And so then they'd need a bare majority. I guess looking first at the Republican side, do we expect a vote on party lines on the Republican side for that sort of thing, ignoring the kind of complication of deficits and things like that, just in terms of pure energy policy? Do we expect 53 or Republican votes in the Senate and kind of a bare majority in the House?
I think it's plausible. It just depends on what it is. Like they don't have to blanket repeal the IRA. They could repeal certain parts that have more sort of consensus.
Yeah, that sounds right. Then again, the Democrats, like I said, also lost some votes on this last time. So even if some of the Republicans defect, we could see some kind of cross-party voting here. I don't know. This one is really tough. Talking to folks in the energy industry here, there's not a consensus, but what I'm hearing is that there's a decent chance that they chip away at some of this stuff, either by shortening the subsidies, which are currently scheduled to run until I think it's 2032, potentially sunsetting more quickly, which would help with scoring, or potentially reducing but not eliminating those subsidies, maybe limiting the higher end of the investment tax credits, right? 70% credits, which are available, if not quite online yet today. That's a big part of what makes this expensive. And potentially Congress could get some kind of deficit hawk points, just by limiting those things around the fringes. So the answer on this one is we don't know. If Congress does step in and if these subsidies do get curtailed, then that does hurt the ROI, the return on investment from green energy investing. Right now, solar purchasing for tax purposes, just purely on the numbers, is close to a no-brainer for a lot of people. If the numbers come down, it may still be. If these credits are eliminated entirely or go back to the level they were at pre-2022, then we go back to a world where this may be back to the province of just corporations and really high net worth individuals, and not so much for retail investors, which is what we've seen over the last few years. And of course, if that happens, then very likely money will flow to what we think of as substitute tax planning strategies like oil and gas, real estate, and some other things. Again, we don't know, but we're going to continue to press ahead. And also, as Peter said, almost invariably, these sorts of changes are prospective. And so if Congress takes 6 months to get its act together on this stuff, or does reconciliation at the end of next year, which is what happened in 2017, right? They passed a bill in late December 2017 that went into effect on January 1st, 2018, which was 1 year after President Trump took office the first time. Then certainly this year's projects and even next year's projects will still get the benefits that they expected. It's not something you need to worry about losing after you've already put money in, but it's something to keep an eye on going forward as a strategy.
Thank you.